This is Legends of '84, the story of BYU's remarkable national championship football team, told by the men who changed the world of college football and were forever transformed by that unforgettable season.
We knew we were going to be good. How good? Nobody knows.
I just never thought we'd lose. And each game that we won, we got more and more confident.
But once we played next to each other, we protected one another.
If you're not willing to prepare, then you're not going to be ready to win.
We are a peculiar people. We need to embrace that.
Brigham Young University has won the Holiday Bowl 24-17, and the Cougars are the only undefeated team in the nation. And I think they'll be number one.
Their offensive line is so awesome, especially when it comes to giving Robbie Bosco 5, 6, 7 seconds to throw the football. And as you pointed out, that big surge by that good offensive line. And
a center usually does. You see Locke and Craig Garrick out there, but Trevor's also out there leading the play.
There's 7 kids in the family. Our dad left the family when I was fairly young, and we were the only family that I knew of in Provo that's dad wasn't either a doctor or a BYU professor, it felt like. Hi, my name's Michelle Kaufusi. I am Craig Garrick's little sister, and I am also the mayor of Provo. My brother Craig was a right tackle on the offensive line. We weren't really active in the church, and eventually, a single mom with 7 kids working the graveyard shift at the hospital, we were the kids that ran the streets. And Craig is number 4. I'm number 6 in the lineup, and so we had a lot of free time together. As kids, we were each other's best friends and biggest advocates, and I have a million memories of my brother Craig. Craig was always a big kid. We're all big in our family. We're tall. My dad was like 6'7", and my mom was 5'8", and Craig was a big kid, and so he was a little bit chubby. He had freckles and red hair. It was the perfect combo, and you would think that maybe he was the one that maybe kids would pick on. Craig was such a gentle giant. He was exactly opposite. He was such a warrior for the kids that were getting picked on. He was magnetic. Everyone wanted to be his friend. Fun enough, his best friend was Kyle Whittingham. I don't have a childhood memory of Craig without Kyle in my house. Craig and Kyle were really athletic, just naturally athletic and fun. We all went to Provo High, and Craig played basketball, track. Him and Kyle did everything, football, just because that was who they were. He was playing in a basketball game. This is when the championships used to be at the Marriott Center. And I remember my mom got off work, which was a big deal because she never missed work because, she had to work. We had 1 car and 7 kids and her, and she never missed, but she came for this game. And so we were there, and the fans were calling Craig like chubby something. And my mom's pretty chill. She was so sad that they were calling her son fat. And Craig was so funny. I remember him lifting up his shirt and grabbing his belly and jiggling it to the fans and just having fun with it. He was a lot of fun. Even in the hardest times, we never leaned on government help or church help. Being on the other side of this and becoming active and being in meetings now, we were the project. The bishop was our home teacher. We were the ones, but I'm glad because it gave our neighbors someone to worry about and serve, and we love them. My mom, including Craig, all of us around the table on Sundays were putting whatever money we earned from either babysitting or cleaning homes or mowing lawns on the table because she was not about getting free help. We were just born that way, to be hard workers. Seriously, my first job I started at 12, and I have never stopped working since. It's amazing, and Craig's the same way. The work ethic and the grit and the grind, work doesn't scare any of us. And I think that was one of Craig's greatest qualities, was he had that in him, and that's what made him so successful on the football field, even amidst all his injuries and issues he was dealing with. Craig, he was drawn to sports. It fit him. With his big body, it worked great, and he was really athletic. We were over at Springville High School, and he was playing for Provo High. And Mom came yelling at us and told us to get in the car. Craig's been hurt, and we saw the ambulance grab him. This played a huge role in his life because it really was the beginning of it for him. I remember hearing it was an illegal block and the play was over and all these things, but it blew out his knee. And he had to immediately go into surgery, and these were the days where you go into the plaster cast when you're hip to toes in plaster after the surgery. And it was so sad because when they cut the cast to check it after the surgery and it had settled, the doctor said, "Oh, this isn't good. This odor came out." That was so horrible. And he had staph infection. That was also the beginning of this ongoing knee issue. He ended up having 7 knee surgeries, surgery after surgery. Even in college, he had surgeries on this knee. Just, it was never the same. The tissue had died and it was shaped horrible. If anyone knows Craig, they know he walked with a limp because of all the surgeries and all the infections. It just literally ate away at his joint and the scar tissue and everything. His pain was high, and he had a lot of pain, but that kid loved sports more than he loved pain. There was times where they would say, "Just be done." But there was no way. You could not take that out of Craig. He loved sports more than anything.
Well, you're talking about Garrick. You're talking about a brave guy. He does have the face mask. That's exactly what the call is, but I really like this guy. He wasn't supposed to play. Lavelle Edwards, who really cares about his players, just like Coach Fazio, he told him, you ought to give it up. You're talking about bone against bone with that knee. He says, no, I want to play, and he can still run. I watched him yesterday. He can move.
He has no cartilage in his left knee after 7 operations.
I remember my mom being worried about Craig because he was getting offered scholarships, and him and Kyle out of Provo High. And I'm remembering if it was the first knee injury or a second surgery he had to have, but all of a sudden everyone went silent on him, which is typical. I mean, I married a football coach, for Pete's sakes. I've lived this life for 37 years. And Lavelle was in our ward, Lavelle and Patty. It was the best thing for our family that this neighborhood that could have turned their back on us enveloped us and brought us full circle. And Mom was talking to Lavelle one day about Craig, because Lavelle knew Craig and Kyle really well, and just said, he's going through it now because you guys, everyone's kind of backed off, and he's graduating and feeling a little bit, we're worried a little bit. And he said, listen, tell Craig to go on a mission. If he'll go on a mission and let that knee heal, then have him come back and talk to me when he gets off his mission. And that was an amazing game changer for Craig. He got called to Florida, Tallahassee, and he went down to Florida and served a mission. He loved his mission president. Again, he's a natural leader, and he got called to be the AP, I believe, and the mission home was close to one of the universities. I think it's Florida State or somewhere down there. The mission president gave him permission to go work out at the football facility there. So he started working out and was a really hard worker, great missionary. His mission companions loved him. Comes off his mission and he's ready to go. So he got off his mission from Florida, Tallahassee, gave his welcome home in our ward, and Lavelle was in the audience. Lavelle said, I'll send Roger over to talk to you guys, and there we go. Craig loved Roger French. He would have done anything for Roger French, and the rest is history. He went to BYU and started and played and worked his way up. He iced his knee religiously. He got so good at it. Back in the day, Percocet was a real popular painkiller that was handed out pretty generously. And that was the first monkey on Craig's back, was he got addicted to Percocet. And surgery after surgery, I remember my mom just getting so mad, and she was a fighter. You'd have to be ornery to raise 7 kids. She was a nurse, so she took care of our whole neighborhood. She would come off work and go to work into the neighborhood to take care of taking temperatures and let me check your child. But the pills, she, right out of the gate, was against all of that. It was the most horrible looking knee you've ever seen. It was just bone on bone and deformed. His whole leg was so skinny because they had cut out so much of the staph It was just horrible. There was just nothing left but bone on bone. So the whole leg was deformed anyways. And then he would lace up his shoes, brace it up, and he would stuff all kinds of stuff under the brace because the knee just wasn't there to hold it in place, and then just bind it to his leg so he could go out and play because he just loved the game so much. And he had to play through a lot of pain. But as soon as that game was over, he would be given stuff to help him be able to go home and sleep and work again, get back to practice again.
Here's the thing, Craig kept playing, and he played on the highest level. Nobody was a better offensive lineman on that team than Craig Garrick. This is Trevor Matich, center. He was magnificent, but he played with all those knee surgeries. He was bone on that knee. And without Craig, we don't win the national championship because of the nature of our pass protection schemes. Every offensive lineman had to be able to perform on an island by himself without help most of the time. Craig did it with pain that none of us could really relate to. And he always smiled, he never complained. And that was the part, I think, that was moving to the rest of us, was that he didn't make excuses for it. He didn't opt out of practice for it. Nobody would have minded if he did. He just kept going. And there was always a smile on his face. And part of the brotherhood and camaraderie of that team was embodied in Craig Garrick's spirit and his positive attitude and his love for the game, the team, his brothers, in the midst of playing with more pain than anybody I've ever seen on any level of football in my entire life.
Getting called back to the New York, it was either Jets or Giants, being flown back there and so excited, but then being sent home 48 hours later because he flunked the physical. It was heartbreaking because, again, Craig had the heart for it. He had the mindset. He had the personality. He just didn't have the knee for it. The one thing that he just didn't have. Had he not had those injuries, he would have probably been one of those offensive linemen that had like a 15-year career in the NFL. Craig died young. He was 40 years old. What had happened is when you take prescription drugs, it eats your stomach out and your esophagus, because I guess they're really hard to digest and all those things. And so he was having all these stomach problems with ulcers. The doctors got in there and they knew right away that he had issues with this. And once they put him under, he basically threw a cardiac arrest and died. They weren't able to control the pain, the damage on the inside from years and years of this just had caught up with him. I was with him when he passed. So was Kyle. Just thinking about it again last night, just thinking he's free now. And he hated it just as bad as we hated it. But knowing that he's free from that is just the most wonderful thought for me and for our family. He is free from that. It's the beauty of God and the grace of God. God loves Craig. Craig is fun. He's probably just joking around and working hard. And again, we are all hard workers and work doesn't scare us, but I know that God loves Craig. I knew God loved Craig even when I would go visit him in his rehab centers. I knew God loved him because that guy is good. He had a bad shake and it didn't serve him well, but he is good through and through. He would do anything for anyone.
And in 2005, they got lucky and they found something that worked in the form of big old truck Kyle Whittingham. And I'm not saying that just as a metaphor. The man built like a truck. He's like in fabulous shape, and I don't think he's missed a day working out in like 35 years. But you can back.
Me and Craig, we go way back. We moved to Utah. I'm trying to think. I was 15 years old. It was 9th grade year. And Lavelle Edwards had just hired my father. My father played in the NFL for 10 years, something like that. This is Kyle Whittingham, head football coach at the University of Utah. Lavelle offered him a job up at BYU, and the whole family pulls up stakes, moves to Utah, Provo, Utah, in the summer of '74. Craig Garrick was, about a block and a half away from where we live. And when we first got there, getting ready for a Little League football season, went to the tryouts and had not met Craig yet because, again, he was about a block and a half away. But there we met to football tryouts. and hit it off right away. From that time forward, he was my best friend. From 74 until he passed, we were inseparable. We did everything together. He went on a church mission, and so that put a little gap from when we were together playing ball in college. When he got back, I was a senior, I believe, because I was just going through the normal 4-year routine, but we were inseparable all the way through. Didn't hang out as much or have as much opportunity to spend time together later on in life. We each had our own responsibilities, but without a doubt, my best friend, we were like brothers. One of the most kind-hearted, big-hearted people you'll ever meet, would give you the shirt off his back, cared a whole heck of a lot more about others than he did about himself. He was all about everybody else. And terrific athlete, by the way. I mean, a tremendous athlete. It was a shame our senior year in high school, playing against Springville High. We were Provo High Bulldogs. He got an illegal crackback block on him and shattered his knee. As bad a knee injury as you can imagine. Virtually every ligament, all the cartilage, everything was just gone. Never recovered from that. I was devastated. It might as well have been happening to me. We were so close. He had so many complications with it after the surgery. He had infection after infection. It was just a mess, and almost lost his leg at one point. And there was talk of that, of just not being able to continue. Just a difficult time for me to see him suffer like that, because from the surgery till when he was okay to just function again, it was a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and actually had to come home off his mission, I believe, for a short period of time to have another surgery. And eventually he finished the mission and got back, and when he rejoined the team, I was just about on my way out, and I was really excited to watch him play those last 3 years. He really was an excellent player. I don't want to make it sound like he wasn't a really good college player, because he was. And to do what he was doing on one leg was nothing short of miraculous.
Kyle Whittingham was a star at BYU and is a star at Utah. In fact, he's been part of more Utah victories than any football coach in school history. Kyle's carried the mantle as head coach since...
My father was on the staff at BYU, and that really was the difference maker for me, was to have the chance to play for him. Although when I first got there, I was a fullback, and so he coached linebackers and was defensive coordinator, so he wasn't my coach initially. It was after my first year there, they made the move and moved me to linebacker, so I had the opportunity to play directly for him. And of course, Lavelle was a big reason. He was a guy that everybody wanted to play for, just a guy that he had such a demeanor about him and a way of how he went about his business that just made you want to play for him. But to this day, I've never met a football coach or been around a football coach that was as great a teacher or X and O guy or motivator as my father was. He was incredible. Lavelle was a master of surrounding himself with outstanding assistant coaches. A line of assistant coaches that have come through there and were there during his time, it's impressive. I mean, you have Mike Holmgren and Doug Scoville and my father and Norm, the list goes on. And Andy Reid played there and was a grad assistant there. And of course, you know what he's done, obviously. He was a master of that, and not only hiring the right people, but letting them do their job, not trying to be a micromanager. And I tried to take the best from 3 head coaches that really shaped me, I guess you can say, or who I drew from, were Lavelle and Ron McBride and Urban Meyer. Those 3 guys, I tried to take the best of what they had and put it all together to fit my personality. And with Lavelle, it was being able to hire great people, be a steady, calming influence on the program, never too high, never too low. We never panic, never get too emotional either way. And that really provided a stability, an emotional stability for the football team. We played like that on the field on Saturdays. We never flinched. We just believed that we were going to win week in and week out. And I didn't lose a whole bunch of games down there. I think we might have lost 5 games in the 4 years I played. It was a pretty good experience.
Kyle Whittingham has been in or around the Utah football program, either as a coach or a graduate assistant, since 1994. The irony is that he played football at BYU, Utah's historical rival in one half of the Holy War. They hired him from defensive coordinator to head coach.
The rivalry, the Holy War, I guess people call it. I don't particularly care for that name, but the rivalry game, I'm going to tell you right now that ever since 74, when we got there, every single year for 50 years, there's been at least one Whittingham on one side or the other. And so I'm going to tell you that we have more experience and more involvement in the rivalry than anybody that ever lived. You're hard-pressed to find a family that has been more, I don't want to say consumed, but just part of that great game. It's obviously the biggest in-state sporting event of the entire year. I can't imagine there's anything else that would be bigger. It's not quite what it was. It may be now because we're back in the same conference, but for that period of time when we're in different conferences or independent, whatever, and there was breaks in the action, we'd have a couple years off here and a couple years off there. That never was the case. It was back in the Mountain West days when the WAC, it was continuous and every year and the last game of the year. And so it still hasn't gotten back to that last game of the year slot. I know this year the schedule came out somewhere in the middle or towards the end. So it's still every bit as intense, every bit as emotional. But I can say this, that maybe the biggest impact on it has been the transfer portal, because you don't end up playing in that game 4 or 5 years. You're here for a year or two, and pretty much half your roster is new each year. You're close to it. And so you got to educate. You got to educate your guys, tell them what it's all about, and give them the rivalry game crash course, I guess you can say. It is extremely intense. And as far as the emotion and the passion, it's got to be as emotional as any game in the country. Any rivalry in the country may not have as many eyeballs on it on game day or as many people in the stands due to the stadium sizes, but it is a very intense game.
Incredible Utah football coach, Kyle Whittingham. And I mean that sincerely. The guy has built one of the best programs in the entire nation. And I'm not just talking built one of the best programs in terms of wins and losses. I mean,
it was actually a very easy transition for me, and I'll tell you why. My father got hired here in 1992 by Ron McBride, and once he became a member of the Utah staff, our whole family, we switched. Blood is thicker than water, and our family is very tight and very, very supportive of each other. And as soon as he made that transition, the whole family made that emotional shift. And then, of course, I got here in 94. We were on the staff together, me and my father, for that 1 year, and then he took off for the Raiders the next year. But Whittinghams, they hang together, and they are fiercely loyal to each other. And so that made it really a no-brainer as far as who we reach for. Love Kalani, love his father, love his family. He was a terrific coach for us for, 9-10 years. He was on this staff for a long time. Started out as a linebacker coach, worked his way to defensive coordinator, did a great job for us there. And then, of course, he moved on to Oregon State, I think is where he went first before he ended up becoming the head coach for the Cougars. But Kalani, I can't say enough good things. We get together in the summertime, just support each other. And like I said, his father's a special guy too, Tom. I mean, he goes and sees my mom is 86 years old, living down in Provo. He goes up quite often just to visit her and say hi to her and, make sure she's doing okay. And that's just the kind of guy he is. He's always trying to help others and be of service. My faith is very important to me, always has been. It really has been a moral compass, I guess you can say, for my life and for how I approach life. I feel very fortunate to have had so many good influences around me growing up and so many people that really kept me on the right path.
Coming up next episode.
It was literally like under my breath. I'm like, you stupid son. And the next thing I know, Lavelle's got my face mask. I pull it off my head and he goes, you're off get out of here, you're off the field. I said, why would you let him do that? So I ended up having to go up to his house that night. He goes, well, you know why you're here. I said, yeah, I do, Coach. I said, I understand why you were mad because you had just told us not to do that. But I said, I couldn't understand how you let that happen to one of our best players and not say anything.
Thank you for listening to Legends of 84. This podcast series was produced by Eric Michael Robertson and Scott Christofferson with Bree Ray Alpew as associate producer. Music by Stuart Maxfield and Eric Michael Robertson. Legends of 84 is a production of BYU Radio.